Hey everybody, thanks for being here. Well, I can't say good to see you, because I can't see you, but you can see me. But yeah, thanks for being here. Haven't done a drive time dialectic for a while. I have been a little reticent to do it because I've had a rental vehicle for the last almost month, actually over a month. I had a rental vehicle for almost 45 days. And then on top of having the rental vehicle, I had out of town or out of state plates on that puppy, Illinois, which of course in Minnesota makes you a target on a lot of levels. So I decided to refrain from any drive times during that time, even though I had a lot to talk about. But yeah, so welcome. Thanks for stopping by MBRR Media, Drive Time Dialectic. And we're gonna have a very serious conversation. Thanks for tuning in. Big shout out to all of my channel subscribers. Nearly 5,000 of you now. I really appreciate that. So I hope you guys will, not just subscribe, but you'll watch, share, like, comment, come back and watch on the replay. Tell your friends to watch on the replay. Share this out while it's live. Hit that super chat, super thank you, super stickers, whatever. Always looking for more support. And for the channel members, thank you so much, channel members, for being around, being faithful, being supportive. Cannot thank you guys enough for all of that. So, as a lot of you know, like, even though my some people struggle with me saying that I'm a Christian and taking such a hard-line stance like I do when it comes a lot of issues, especially I can be pretty salty at times with my verbiage. I think salty language is it can be applicable to a situation. It can be useful in certain situations, but yeah, even though I have salty language from time to time, that doesn't preclude me from being a Christian. Even though I have a very small government position, basically I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I think little to no government is better than small to midland levels of government. And a lot of people have a hard time with that because a lot of people believe that Christians are people of government and that we are to, seek to, for lack of better terminology, seek to build government. And I can understand that to a certain perspective because there's a lot of passages in the scripture that seem to be interpreted as being very pro-government, and I think that is has been abused by government. Consider what England did with the conception of the King James version of the Bible. I mean, there's a reason why it's called the King James version or the King James translation. It was literally done at the behest and the commissioning of King James, because he wanted his own version, his own translation of the Bible. So, I mean, these are things that we have to wrestle with. So, but yeah, like government of the people, for the people, right? So, over the last week, especially, I've been watching as mutual contacts, friends, we call them friends on Facebook, but it's not really, I mean, we really don't, for the most part, a lot of these people aren't friends if you think about what a friend is. But I call them contacts or acquaintances on Facebook. But I've been watching a lot of conservative Christians on Facebook come back to this spot of cop worship. It's troubling to me because it's as if they've forgotten the last several years. When you think about law enforcement, when you think about cops, when you think about deputies, when you think about city officers and state troopers and state police, and you think about federal law enforcement, from the FBI to the DEA to ATF and on and on and on. We put them in a position where we hail them as heroes, and Christians in particular have a tendency to do this in a way that's troublesome, because they cherry pick scripture. Christians very much cherry pick scripture to really point to cops as the one form of government that Christians have to be 100% behind all the time. You have to always be behind cops if you're a Christian. And a particular post, and I'm not going to mention the individual's name right now, a particular post on Facebook, this individual said it's a duty of Christians to support law enforcement and to encourage law enforcement. Now, they're not encouraged, but to honor and obey and support law enforcement. And I want to start off with this premise of, why do Christians in particular, conservative Christians, why do you single out law enforcement? Why is it that you single out law enforcement as the one entity of government we're supposed to obey? Because I don't see conservative Christians telling everybody that you should obey the school board. I don't see you saying that we should obey teachers. I don't see you saying we should obey soil and water district commissioners. I don't see you saying that we should obey the tax assessor. It always comes down to, well, it's not just a white thing, because look at Brandon Tatum, Officer Tatum, the official Officer Tatum. I mean, this guy is an ex-cop who's bootlicker all the way. And to be honest with you, when I was in the career field, about halfway through my time in the career field, I had started to have a shift in perspective on law enforcement, but I was adamantly bootlicker. I was an adamant bootlicker. I could make arguments to defend cops all day long, even though I knew deep down inside there was this cognitive dissonance happening inside of me. I knew deep down inside that there were things about the law enforcement career field that were very dangerous in how they were trending in the United States. But Christians, conservative Christians in the United States, Republican Christians in the United States in particular, have this worshipful mindset of law enforcement, while having a very negative mindset about every other aspect of government. And they have a very strange relationship with the Pentagon as well. Right? And as a veteran, so I'm covering all the bases here. As a veteran, I despise the Pentagon, and I despise war, and I love soldiers and airmen and Marines and sailors and seamen and all of that. So I want to know from the statist Christians, why is it we're only to respect law enforcement? Now, I believe we should respect all people regardless of their career field. I don't think that any single person should be disrespected just because of the career they're in. I can love a person or care for a person or respect a person that's in a career field that I am adamantly opposed to, and I can treat them with respect while disliking the career they've chosen. I have good friends that are public school teachers. I love them to death. I would lay my life down for them, but I think they're in a very dangerous career field. I really need to get my dash cams installed because the way people are driving these days is just ridiculous. So yeah, I'm driving around in my new vehicle, folks. So so I don't believe in hating people because they're cops. I don't believe in hating people because they're in law enforcement. Now, are there people within the law enforcement career field that I genuinely I have no respect for? Yes, absolutely. There are people, even local to me, that I do not respect them as human beings. I know them to be dirty, rotten human beings. And they might need Jesus, but that doesn't mean I gotta like them. And it doesn't mean I gotta respect them. Now, I will treat them civilly, but I am not gonna treat them with a deferential respect. And that goes for every career field. Now, it's high time that Christians wake up and start falsely using passages like Romans chapter 13 to browbeat other Christians like me, or non-Christians, or left-leaning Christians, which, by the way, I do not know how you can equate being a leftist and being Christian, because there's so much about leftism that is anti-Christian. I am not a leftist. I'm a libertarian, philosophical libertarian, paleo-libertarian, so I have a lot more in common with traditional conservatism than I do with anything on the left. There's some overlap there in that Venn diagram to some degree, but I am not a leftist by any stretch of the imagination. But it's really time that Christians stop using passages like Romans 13 and 2 Peter, where Peter talks about submitting yourself to the king. We have to stop using those passages to justify supporting law enforcement. And one of the great weaknesses in this argument for most people who are in that back the blue rah 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 crowd at all, back the blue at all cost crowd, that is that they equate man's law with God's law. And if there is a law in the books, they assume that that law is moral, that it is ethical, that it is in keeping with Christianity. And they make the argument that laws keep society polite, laws keep society safe, laws keep society in order. And my argument is countervails that. I contradict that statement by saying, so here's a really good example. I don't know how a law that tells you have to wear a seatbelt is good for society and is moral. What's the moral basis for you passing a law, a traffic code, that says that everybody in a vehicle must be wearing a seatbelt, or children must be in a car seat, and if you don't do that, then we're going to empower law enforcement, badged men and women carrying firearms. We're going to empower them to stop you in traffic, to penalize you for not wearing a seatbelt. What's the moral basis? What's the moral structure for window tint? How are you protecting society? How is society saved? How is society kept polite? How is society kept moral? How is society kept free from danger by you telling me that my window tint cannot be any darker than a certain percentage? What's the moral basis for that? Not what's their argument for revenue generation, but what's the moral basis? And Christians will say, look, it's not the cop's job to decide which laws are just. It's not the cop's job to decide which laws are moral, which laws are in keeping with Christian ethics. It's not the cop's job to decide those things. Those things must all be decided by the courts and by the legislators. And if the courts don't like what the legislators are doing, then the courts have a duty to overturn those laws. But until those laws are overturned, cops have a duty to enforce them. And that sounds like a pretty simple argument, right? And the problem with that argument is that it ignores the reality of who the governing authority of the United States is. People believe, wrongly, especially Christians, and I've had this conversation on my channel numerous times, but it's been a year and a half or two since I've talked about this in depth. It's demonstrably true that Christians in the United States have forgotten who the ultimate ruling authority of the United States is. So when they point to Romans 13 and they say, subject yourselves to every governing authority, because there's no governing authority that is not appointed by God. And then it goes on in Romans 13 to talk about what governing authority is appointed to do, which is to reward, ostensibly to reward those that do good and punish the evildoer. Because the governing authority does not bear the sword in vain. So in other words, governing authority, according to God, is to, well, thanks for stopping by. I hope you will, come back again sometime if you haven't subscribed. But the governing authority is to punish what is evil, reward what is good, and to use the sword in a positive way to impact society, to affect society, culture, country, republic, in a way that is good for all. According to what? According to God's definition of what is good. According to God's definition of what is just. According to natural law. So even if you want to remove the phrase God, the word God, if you want to remove the phrase of Christian theology, Christian ethics from it, you could still say according to natural law. So for Christians, they have to ask themselves, one, who is the ruling authority in the United States? Who is the ruling authority in the state that they live in? Who is the ruling authority in the county that they live in, or in the municipality that they live in? Who is the ruling authority? And what we have to remember is that the intent of our founding fathers, even though it's crumbled to a degree, the intent of our founding fathers with the Constitution of the United States was to not have people as the ruling authority. It was to have the Constitution as the ruling authority. It was the Constitution that was to be the highest law of our land. It was the Constitution that was supposed to govern and rule everyone. And then directly under the Constitution of the United States, it was meant to be we the people. Somebody said it earlier, a government of the people, for the people, by the people. The Constitution was formed, written. The Constitution was given to us before the federal government existed. See, the federal government did not exist before the states. The states formed the federal government, and the states formed the federal government based on the Constitution. So the Constitution, written by the individual sovereign states, and then ratified by the individual sovereign states, gave a segment of power to the federal government But that federal government was restricted, was fenced in, if you will, by the Constitution and by the states. That's it. And it was given a very limited scope of power. And contrary to what a lot of people say about the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution does not mean what people think it means. The Supremacy Clause is not there to tell us that the federal government is supreme to the states. It can't be. The federal government cannot be supreme to the U.S. or to the sovereign states. Because if it can rise to a place of supremacy over the sovereign states that created the federal government, then the states cease to exist. Which I would argue, philosophically and historically, is exactly what Lincoln had in mind when he fought a war of aggression to force the Confederate States back into the Republic. Now, I want people to hear this. I want people to understand this. People have to, they're going to have to wrestle with this. All of the Christians out there, you know, I'm a Christian. I am a Calvinist. I am a Reformed Christian, not like Reformed like I was, you know, a bad boy and then I got sent to Reform school. I am a Reformed Calvinistic theologically. I am Reformed philosophically in my theology. I very much respect the works of people like John Calvin and John Zwingli and others of that mindset. It was John Calvin who told us when God wants to judge a nation, he grants them wicked rulers. Tav, thanks for being here. Turbine Guy, thanks for being here. Really appreciate seeing you guys. Everybody say hi. Oh, Nunya Business is here too. Really appreciate everybody stopping in. Guys, if you haven't following each other, please do follow each other. Now's a good time for me to throw that out there. You know, hit the like button, hit the share, super chats. You know, if you haven't joined the channel yet, please do join the channel. But anyway, it was John Calvin who told us that when God wants to judge a nation, when God wants to judge a country, he grants them wicked rulers. And I agree. That got me in a lot of trouble with people when Trump was elected the first time. People ask me, well, now how do you feel that Trump's elected? And that's exactly what I said. Hey, Mercedes, good to see you. I won't be able to check out the chat here in a few seconds when I get out into the rural areas. But so I am Reformed in my Christian theological philosophy. And it was the Reformed Christians, Lutherans, Calvinists, Presbyterians, Calvinistic Baptists, and other Calvinistic Methodists, which there were some. There were multiple churches. Oh, Tav, thank you, man. Everybody, if you get a membership, thank Tav. The reality is that it was Reformed Christian pastors that were driving the United States war for independence, the American war for independence from Great Britain. And yet I've got Christians today telling me that it is the duty of Christians to honor and obey government, but in particular to honor and obey cops, to support law enforcement, because they are appointed by God for our good. Now, that's just asinine. It's just asinine because they aren't consistent, because they will point to the founding fathers. They will point to the men like Washington and Jefferson and Adams and Franklin and others. They will point to these people and they will say, our founding fathers wanted X, and our founding fathers were predominantly coming from a theistic Christian perspective. So we are to honor government. We are to obey government. In particular, we are to obey God by obeying cops, by honoring cops. But then, when I ask them, and this is a question you need to ask every single person that tells you you have a duty to honor cops, that you have a duty to be obedient to cops, that you have a duty to treat cops with deferential respect, because we are to honor government and God has appointed government, ask them, then is it not now your duty to be advocating that the United States be returned to British rule? Because it was a sinful, wicked act on the part of the founding fathers to fight a war for independence, to break away from the rightful ruling authority that God appointed over them, which was the British Empire. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot honor the founding fathers. You cannot talk about how they fought this war and it was a good thing that they fought the war, and you cannot talk about how wonderful it was that Christians inspired that fight. You cannot talk about how wonderful it is that they fought that war and then turn around and say that you cannot question cops, you have to obey cops, you have to respect cops, you have to support cops, and you have to do it to support government. And Tav said something that I said to someone earlier. Our founding fathers built in to the United States Republic, we are not a nation, we are a republic, built into our republic via the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they built into it the ability, or not ability, the protections that are granted to us via natural rights to question government, to disobey unlawful authority. So there again, Christians in America, this is not to everybody. I know that not all of my channel members are Christians. I know not all my subscribers. I know that not all my viewers are Christians. I know that I have some hate watchers out there that are back the blue at all costs Christians. You cannot, in one breath, praise the American war for independence, then turn around and say that we have a duty to submit to government. You can't. We have to obey police, that we have to obey government, and especially obey when our founding fathers built into the framework of the fence that restricts government the ability to tell cops, get bent. Show up at my house without a warrant, get bent. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. See, the entire spirit of the United States was built up and raised. It's predicated upon the spirit of not obeying wickedness. It's a spirit of not obeying those that are not ruling justly. And you know, Tav is here, Turbine Guy is here. There are so many others here, but in particular, Tav and Turbine Guy, they both have gotten to know me pretty well. The reality is that law enforcement in the United States is a tool of oppression of the people. And I brought this up in a conversation with somebody the other day. And that person laughed at me and said, well, law enforcement in Russia or China maybe, but not in the US. Are you kidding me? Let me tell you about how they've treated Turbine Guy. Let me tell you about how law enforcement has treated turbine guy from here in Minnesota. Just here in Minnesota. Let me tell you about how law enforcement has treated the angry vet. How they've treated Tav. Let me tell you about the stories that I cover. And I do something a little different with my channel than some others do. I'm not a cop watcher per se. I'm not a First Amendment auditor per se. I'm not Jeff Gray. I'm not Long Island Audits. I'm not Lackluster. I'm not Audit the Audit. I'm not even High Impact Flicks. I'm not Brian from Here's the Deal. I'm not Amagansett Press. I'm not Tav. You know, all these channels that I just mentioned are massively more important than me. Massively more important than what I do. But let me tell you about all these stories. And I cover stories from other places too, who aren't getting traction with some bigger channels. And I cover their stories because I believe their stories need to be told, you know, talked about, and their stories be told. There are Tav's channel in particular, massive compared to mine. Look at what he's been through. But look at the stories that I cover. Look at the story I'm covering out of St. Charles, Minnesota right now. Look at what I'm covering with my Justice for Baby Haven coverage right now. Go watch this live stream that I did yesterday in my Justice for Baby Haven video. Go, I challenge you to look at it, Christians. Christians who believe that we are to support law enforcement no matter what, and understand that it's our duty to submit to them because it's not their job, like it's just their job to enforce the laws, and that's it. Go look at that story. Look at how law enforcement colluded with social services. And here's an example. We know that the vast majority of Christian conservatives have no respect for social services. No respect. They think that social services are all corrupt. They think they're worthless. Well, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? If social services is a corrupt part of government, why is law enforcement not a corrupt part of the government? Somebody explain that to me. Because law enforcement works with social services to help medically kidnap children all over the United States every day. Like I said, go watch the Justice for Baby Haven playlist. There are 3 full-length videos up there right now. Go watch those videos where I break down how law enforcement colludes with social services. And there's at least 8 more videos, at least 8 more video breakdowns that we're going to be doing. At least. How about Minnesota State Patrol Trooper Shane Roper, who murdered Olivia Flores on May 18th of 2024 because he got away with multiple violations of traffic codes with not even so much as a slap on the wrist. Over and over and over again, he violated traffic codes that he was enforcing on other people. Missing my kids, yes, that's a you know, I appreciate your point that you are for social services. I am a conservative anarcho-capitalist. I believe we should begin abolishing all government agencies and departments. So that's just me. But anyway, you know, so go look at the story of Trooper Shane Roper that I have told about the Justice for Olivia playlist. Go see. I broke that story here in Minnesota. I was the first person to tell the full truth of what Shane Roper did prior to the night that he murdered Olivia. What about Trooper Ryan Moser back on April 9th? Tomorrow's the anniversary. We're going to be doing a live stream of that. We're going to be doing a live stream talking about all these months since Trooper Ryan Moser paralyzed Blake Mosted on April 9th and walked away without so much as a slap on the wrist, doing 126 miles an hour. Wait till you see the dash cam video about how fast he was going and how he was driving. And that's just 3 stories, just 3. I'm working on another one from up in Northwest Central, Minnesota, of a young man that disappeared on July 4th weekend in 2020. Just disappeared. It's been 5 years. No one's seen him. No one's heard from him. The last people that saw him alive were cops. Over and over and over and over and over and over again. What are we seeing? Go watch the civil rights attorney's most recent videos. The video that he just put out last night, Brian from Civil Rights Attorney, or excuse me, John from Civil Rights Attorney, put a video out of a man who was arrested and charged with a felony for saying, "I will sue your department." Sue your department. Arrested and ultimately charged, lost his job because he was arrested for saying, "I will sue your department." And the cop lied, falsified a report, affidavit, a sworn affidavit to a judge, knowingly falsified a sworn affidavit. Saying that the man threatened to shoot, to pew-pew the entire department. Never said it. Didn't happen. Now, ultimately, public pressure got brought to bear on that situation, and they dropped the charges. But if it hadn't been for public pressure being put on the agency, those cops would have gotten away with lying. Over and over and over again during COVID, during 2020 into 2021, we watched cops follow unlawful orders, forcing people to wear masks in places like Minnesota, or be thrown out, trespassed from public meetings like school board meetings and city council meetings and county commission meetings, threatening to or actually trespassing people from businesses for not wearing masks, being told that if you show up at a business and you're not wearing a mask, we're going to require the business to turn you in and have the cops come and trespass you. And if you refuse to leave from the grocery store for not wearing a mask when you're being trespassed, then you're going to be arrested. Over and over and over again. We watched cops in 2020 arrest mothers in parks in Idaho for playing with other people and their children in a park in Idaho. A mom was arrested for playing in a park during COVID. We watched a man get arrested for paddleboarding in the ocean in California by himself. No one around. He got arrested for paddleboarding. Paddleboarding. Alone. Cops did that. Look at the stories that I covered in Minnesota. Look at my stories about Lisa Hansen from Albert Lee and the interchange and what they did to her. It was cops that investigated her. It was law enforcement that investigated her. It was law enforcement that sent in a confidential, reliable informant. They paid a person and offered them a plea deal. They offered a plea deal to an accused criminal to go and spy on Lisa and provide information so that they could charge her with crimes, and then they forced her into court She got arrested. Then she got forced into court where the judge told her she wasn't allowed to talk about the Constitution in her own trial. It was cops that made that possible. It was law enforcement that made that possible. It was law enforcement that came for me in my own career, for my podcast, for what I'm doing right now. It was law enforcement that came for me. It was a law enforcement officer, chief of police of Albert Lee, J.D. Carlson, working with the city attorney, Kelly Don Martinez, turned me into the FBI, turned me into the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And when that didn't go anywhere, which I'm shocked it didn't, I still know that my content is watched. I know for a fact there are still agencies in Southeast Minnesota that do monitor my content. I know for a fact that happened. But when they couldn't get the FBI to come after me and they couldn't get the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to come after me, they used their power to determine where I worked and then filed formal complaints against me with the sheriff. They doxed me and got me investigated. 60 plus days under internal investigation for my content on my podcast. +60 days. It was law enforcement that did that to me. Over and over and over again, we see constantly that it is law enforcement that makes all of the injustice, that makes all of the corruption, that makes all of the abuse, makes all of the tyranny possible. Without law enforcement in the United States, those things, those acts of tyranny that you people on the right hate about the left, it is law enforcement that enables it. It's law enforcement that empowers it. Every one of those laws that you say are ridiculous and we shouldn't follow, it is law enforcement that makes that possible. It is law enforcement that will arrest people for silently, and it happens in the United States, constantly in the United States. People are arrested and charged with disturbing the peace and public disorder for preaching outside of abortion clinics. Christians preaching outside of abortion clinics are arrested by cops constantly. And if you don't think that cops are a tool of oppression in this country, then you are blind. And I'll say again, your hypocrisy knows no bounds, because you will turn on any other form of government and complain about them and talk about how they're a waste of taxpayer, wage slave, tax cattle dollars. You will talk about that, but then when it comes to cops, we need to pay them more. We need more of them. You need to obey them. If you aren't doing something illegal, you don't have anything to fear. And I can demonstrate time and time and time and time again where cops target people who are doing nothing wrong. And here's the problem. There are so many laws on the books now that you are always doing something wrong. You're breaking the law every single time you walk out of your house. You're breaking the law every time you sit in your house. You're doing something that violates some law somewhere. You know, an old New York district attorney said, "I have enough that I can indict a ham sandwich." It is high time for Christians to wake up and realize that misinterpreting, misapplying Romans 13 to government in the United States, and in particular law enforcement in the United States, when we know that it is not law enforcement that is the ruling authority, they're not the sword bearers in the United States. It is not the federal government. It's not state government. It's not county government. It's not local government that are the ruling authorities in the United States. The ruling authority in the United States, according to Christian doctrine and according to our founding fathers, is the Constitution with "we the people." And we have forgotten that. Christians in particular should be ashamed. I said this about Baby Haven's story last night. The reason that Baby Haven was medically kidnapped and they've been able to get away with it is because we, as liberty-loving, conservative libertarians, paleo-libertarians, centrist libertarians, liberty-loving patriots, it is us. We are to blame because we have let it get this far out of hand. We have let this happen. We have created this mess, and it's high time that we start standing up and pushing back against it, not just against cops, not just against local government, not just against county, state, and federal government, not just against federal law enforcement. We need to start pushing back against the blind followers, the blind statists in our country, on both sides of the philosophical spectrum, the conservatives and the leftists. We have to push back against all of them, and we have to start saying to them, enough is enough. We're not putting up with your statism anymore. Christianity is not a religion of statism. It is a religion of independence. It is a religion of liberty. If you are a Christian, you have to acknowledge that God gave you natural rights. God granted you natural rights, and part of those natural rights is to question everything. That's the position of our founding fathers. If you need a law and you need a guy with a gun or a gal with a gun and a badge, if you need that person to come into your life to tell you how to live your life, then you are not a moral person. You are just a tool of the state. End of story. End of discussion. If you cannot live your life in a way that you are not doing harm to other people without some law hanging over your head, you are a psychopath. Yes, I mean that. You are a psychopath. You are a sociopath. You are the problem. Because what we have learned is not only do cops not keep us safe, the courts have ruled the cops are not obligated to keep us safe, and laws have not prevented any of the crimes that you tell us we're being protected from when cops are on the job. Now, if there's somebody out there that wants to have this conversation with me, they want to push back on me on this, my email address is mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. I would love to have you on. I would love to have you on to have a debate, measured and friendly, but to have this debate. The problem is, all these people who call themselves intellectuals and think that I'm full of crap, they'll never do this. They'll never have the debate. I've offered this to 1,000 people easily in the 5+ years that I've been doing this, and not one of them on this topic has ever had the balls to stand up and debate me on this, because they know I've got them. I just need to take them to, why is it just cops and not all people in government? And are you ready to return us to being ruled by the crown? Say that one more time. Not many are willing to say we should return to being ruled by the British crown, because what the founding fathers did in your book was unlawful and a violation of God's law. And I mean that. It was a violation of God's law. If we are to obey cops and honor cops and support cops because they're the government, and we need laws to keep us safe and make society polite, then we were wrong in our founding, and our founding fathers were nothing more than criminals and anti-Christian monsters. That's it. There's no other argument. So, thanks for tuning in. If you know somebody that wants to debate me on this, let me, have them reach out to me, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. Thanks everybody for sharing this. Thanks for being here, sharing your comments. Thanks so much to the Angry Vet for the 10 channel memberships. The gift memberships, that was really cool. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Tav. Turbine Guy, thanks for being here. Missing my kids, that's awesome. Mercedes, Jen, everybody else, I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope that you will share this out, and I will be clipping shorts out of this if I can find any that I think are worth clipping. And please go check out the Justice for Haven and the Justice for Blake playlist, and tune in tomorrow for my December 9th reminder that we haven't forgotten Trooper Ryan Moser and the fact that he tried to unalive Blake and his brother Braxton, and the pain that he's left that family. And so, my friends, until next time, fight for your liberty, it is yours. Fight for your freedom, it belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.